The beautiful part of a sport is people keep coming back. They train and there's that consistency. I think the more important thing is the community. There is no place in the Spikeball app where you can enter a score of a win or loss. We don't care who won or lost. We care who is bringing people together.
Our next guest didn't just build a product or a business. He resurrected a game and turned it into a sport. Chris built Spikeball over 18 years, from college campuses all the way to ESPN tournaments. This is an amazing episode. We talk about, you don't create community, you actually facilitate it, and how Chris has done that, and the difference between building a relationship versus converting a sale. We talk about managing your psychology through 18 years of highs and lows, and the psychology of entrepreneurship, and how most people are always talking about their highlight reels, but really it is a lonely journey, especially at the top as CEO. We talk about success and how it can really hide looming challenges and leave you unprepared for difficult times that may lie ahead, and what Chris has learned through those difficult times. This really is a powerful episode and one of my favorites. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris from the famous Spikeball. Chris, welcome to What to Do Next.
Thanks for having me. Excited.
Amazing. Like right away, it like hits you. You're like, oh my God, you didn't invent Spikeball.
Brought it back to life.
Brought it back to life. So tell us about that, because I think that's one of the most interesting stories I've read in a long time.
Yeah, so it originally came out in 1989. I was 14 at the time, and some of my older brother's friends bought a couple of them at, I think, a toy store or some local retail store. Brought them back to the neighborhood, and those guys started playing it, and I thought it looked pretty cool. We learned that the original company launched in 1989, and they killed it, I think, in 91 or 92, so it was maybe around 2, maybe 3 years. And yeah, we kind of kept playing on and off, and for the next 17 years, there was no Spikeball on planet Earth. Fast forward to 2007, me and those friends kind of started playing a little bit more, and we're like, you know what, this would be kind of cool to see if we could bring back to life. And that's essentially what we did.
Why do you think it didn't catch in the first place?
I'm not sure. I don't really know a whole lot about how they went to market. I did hear bits and pieces about how, I don't know how old you are, but do you remember MTV Spring Break?
Sure.
Like it was a massive thing back then. And I think they spent a lot of money on an MTV Spring Break promotion. If I heard the story right, I think it rained a bunch. So that didn't work well. I don't know if they put all their eggs in that one basket. It did seem like Toys R Us was like their main retailer. So if they're going after kids, you need to be probably, 11 or 12 or older, some decent hand-eye coordination to play. They also didn't have this thing called the internet. So we had a bit of an easier go, but not entirely sure why it didn't work. But I also am not sure it was allowed the time. 2 to 3 years isn't a lot of time. And, when I launched it with my buddies, we launched it in a way that, if it didn't work, nobody was going to go starving. This was a side project that if it worked, great. If it didn't, that's okay too. But we had the time to listen to the marketplace, who liked it, who didn't. And given that they launched and killed it in 2 years or so, I'm not sure, and it's a radically different product, right? If you knew nothing about it and you walked by a Toys R Us and saw it, you'd probably think it was a trampoline, and probably a poorly made one. Like, that thing will break the second I jump on it. I think it needed some time for consumer education as well. It wasn't like they had invented a nicer tennis racket or whatever. It was a radically new thing that took a while for consumers to learn what the heck it was.
You said something really interesting. 2 to 3 years is not a lot of time. I have an expression, people don't like to make money slowly. How should entrepreneurs think about the time it really takes to build something meaningful?
It depends on why you're getting into it. So Spikeball was never a let's build it to make $1 million. It was never a let's build it to sell. It was, this will be fun and let's give it a shot. That, I think, definitely worked in our favor. Back then I didn't even consider reaching out to any VC firms or anything like that. I had a feeling they would just laugh me out of the room. And, to this day, we've still been, friends and family bootstrapped. In some cases, of course, that outside money can be a great accelerant. But I also think in some cases it can be lead you to your demise. The second you take that money, the professional investors, they need a return. And sometimes that shows up in the form of a gun to your head, and they say triple the company in 12, 18, 24 months or else. You're no longer allowed to make long-term decisions. You have to hit the number, whether it's good for the end consumer or not. Spikeball is obviously no Berkshire Hathaway, but if you've listened to any interviews with Warren Buffett over the years, one of his biggest tools is time in the market. He's been doing this forever. In his words, that has been one of the biggest things that he can attribute to his success is that long-term time frame. And I'm grateful that that's been the route we've taken. It wasn't deliberate. We just kind of got to working, and I've looked up years later, and I'm now 18 years deep in this.
I mean, I love Warren Buffett, and I follow a lot of what he has to say, and it always sounds good. But when you're treading water, especially as an entrepreneur, I mean, what you're saying is time and market not only applies to investments that are passive, but it actually applies to active pursuits as well. I mean, you've spent, to your point, 18 years building Spikeball. Surely there were years where you kind of probably felt like you were treading water.
Those years I actually felt like I was drowning. Treading would have been lovely. Like a lot of outdoor brands, COVID was this thing that we thought was fantastic for us. We grew an insane amount in 20 and 2021, and then the party stopped. And in 22 and beyond, and all of a sudden, all these retailers had more inventory than they knew what to do with. They started discounting and essentially selling them out the back door to shady discounters, and absolute mess. And I did talk to plenty of people about investing in the business and kind of, doing everything an entrepreneur can do to save their business. And none of those deals felt right. We essentially just kind of woke up every day and, the team dug deep, and we are in a way better position today. I mean, we had 14 years in a row of double-digit profitable bootstrap growth. Just absolutely insane. And why would we not think that we were going to have a 15th year in the row, right? Like I think it led to us getting very fat and happy, thinking that all of our decisions were right. We had an amazing runway behind us, proving or telling us that all that stuff was right. But man, when that music stopped, did I quite get a kick in the gut or punch in the gut that I needed. The way we used to solve problems was, screw it, let's just hire somebody. And you do that enough times, and that gets very expensive. We loosened our standards for sort of who and how we hire, and we had, a lot of fat on the company. And trimming that fat is very painful. It had to be done. While I sure didn't enjoy the sort of challenging period. What a valuable education it was, though. Glad I went through it. Glad we are through it. We're back up and growing again and feeling great about the future of the business, the brand, the community. But yeah, not fun at all.
Hi, I'm David. I'm the president of Highbeam. But before that, I built a brand called David's Tea from 0 to 200 million in sales, and I took it public on the NASDAQ. Highbeam is a banking and cash management platform for consumer brands. It's the bank I wish I had when I was building David's Tea. We'll turn banking from a cost center for you today into a profit center for you tomorrow. We'll make you better cash back on ad spend. We'll maximize your yield on idle working capital through daily automated sweeps. And we have a host of AI-powered tools to save you a boatload of time. Check us out at highbeam.com and let's talk. So you're at this moment where good times had created, excess in the business. All of a sudden the music stops, as you put it, and your choice at that moment is the business is good and there's VC circling around the business willing to invest. You either take those deals that you don't like, or you start cutting and right-sizing the business.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So when we were growing a bunch, it was VCs, PEs, strategics calling. I ignored almost all of them. If I knew the brand or had a loose connection, I'd take the call. Just, hey, I'll always talk to anybody if I think I can learn something from them. And had a few talks, but, we never got to a point to where, at least before 2022, never got to a point where we talked numbers because, again, this wasn't something I was, let's build it and uh, exit and go sit on a beach or whatever. Like I remember like thinking, and I still to this day, like if Spikeball were no longer in my life, like what would I be doing? And like, I think I, like a lot of entrepreneurs and founders, have sort of an unhealthy relationship with just how much of your personal identity is the brand and the business. And, I don't know what I'd do. Now, who knows? Maybe tomorrow I'll change my mind and say, oh, I'd love to do whatever. So I'm never going to say never, but I really like the long-term approach. And I don't think I would have been afforded that if I had had outside investors. I got a feeling they would have been much more, I don't know if impatient is the word, but my time frame and theirs would not have been aligned to put it politely.
Well, especially if yours is indefinite,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I may be doing this another 20, 30 years, or I don't know, but I am not waking up every day thinking about an exit, thinking about much more than how can I grow a solid foundation for this business so it's around for a very long time.
Well, I mean, you're growing more than a business. You're growing a sport. You've kind of voiced concerns that it would turn into a kid's toy instead of an actual sport. Why would that be so bad, and why is that so important to you?
It's not necessarily bad, and I know, like, a lot of my I haven't done, many, many interviews or podcasts over the years, but I think as I've, occasionally listened to some of the older ones, and I did kinda lay out this spectrum of backyard game or sport, and sport is gonna be what, allows us to prevent becoming a fad. And as I think more of that, the sport is definitely important, and the beautiful part of a sport is people keep coming back, they train, and there's that consistency. Now, what I'm learning and sort of realizing is, I think the more important thing is the community. So if you are a casual backyard player, and let's say you play 4 times a month. You are gonna bring way more value, and you play with a bunch of people, and let's say you play on a college campus, and you play 4 times a month. You are bringing way more value to the community, than a, quote, "professional player" that, maybe plays 10 times a month, but on their own and training. That professional or that person that is really training and doing everything they can to win, that is a goal of their own. They want to win. Their goal is not to build community. And, we just relaunched the Spikeball app. And the main goal of it is to reward community builders. There is no place in the Spikeball app where you can enter a score of a win or loss. We don't care who won or lost. We care who is bringing people together. That is our formal mission, to bring people together. So if you are the one, you've got that one person in your friend group where they're always texting saying, hey, let's go out for some drinks. Let's go play whatever. Let's go to a movie. They're that instigator. That's who we want to engage with. And if they're a very serious player or they are the world's worst player, we don't care. As long as they're getting people together and being active, that's what we want. That's the person we want to identify and reward. And so if I could go back and sort of change my answer of, sport versus casual, it's both. But within those groups and within that spectrum, we want to make sure we're going after that person that is bringing people together. So in the sport, the tournament director is way more important to growing the community than the person standing on the top of the podium is, at least in our current stage.
When did that insight hit you? Because you didn't always think about it that way.
No, yeah, and I think, if I look at over the last 5 years or so, I think, we gave probably a little too much attention and resources towards the competitive side and not enough to the casual side. And I have been hearing people over the last few years, and we have been seeing it in some of our data, that a lot of the casual players are kind of turned off by what I call the cleat and jersey crowd. A lot of our competitive players, they always wear jerseys, they always wear cleats, they're training, and I so love all of that. But when you're maybe a 16-year-old kid playing on your high school campus during lunch break, you look at that and you're like, oh my gosh, those people are so committed. Like, no way, man. I'm just here to have some fun.
Right.
And that person, that 16-year-old kid, there's 1,000 more of them than there are the cleat in Jersey. Now, cleat in Jersey, they post way more often. They're way more vocal in what they want about a product and et cetera. So I love that. And I want to make sure we're always serving them. But I think it's my job as CEO of Spikeball to grow the overall pie, the size of the community, and I need to feed the top of the funnel, to mix metaphors here. And I do that by getting more 16-year-old casual players I can get. Some of them will work their way down the funnel and eventually become competitive players. But if I solely focus on servicing the competitive players, I'm not growing the pie, and the sport and community and brand, I don't think will be growing over the long term.
Chris, you bootstrapped for 5 years as a side hustle, right? Like you had a full-time job during that time. Walk us through A, what it like to have a side hustle, and B, what was the moment where it clicked for you where you're like, okay, I'm all in?
Yeah, so when we started, we raised, I don't know, 120,000 dollars, something like that, between five or six of us. And they all became silent shareholders, and I was the lone guy running it. And I had a couple jobs during those 5 or 6 years. So I worked for Microsoft for, I don't know, 4, 5 years, something like that. Worked for Live Nation, a couple small startups, and I do those during the day. Come home, hang out with wife and kids. They go to bed, and then Spikeball work begins. Yeah, and by the way, my eldest is 3 months older than Spikeball, so he recently turned 18, and then we had two more kids in a couple of years following. So during those 5 years, I also had three children. So just wanted to make things a little as hectic as possible. So I figured, why not? But it was, your question was, yeah, so when did I go all in? So it started as this just kind of side thing, like, okay, it'll be fun. And, our first year of revenue, if I remember right, I think it was $10,882. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't, we had no formal goals. And the next year, I think it was like $18,000. I'm like, oh, 80% growth. Fantastic. But when we started creeping up on, a 500,000, and it was when we hit $1 million in annual revenue with zero full-time employees. And back then, that was a big deal. Nowadays, just the numbers are insane. But, I started talking with my accountant. And I'm like, hey, look, I think this little side project of Spikeball is becoming a thing. Will you please look at the numbers? People think entrepreneurs in general are like massive risk takers, and I had a very cush job at Microsoft and benefits and all that stuff. And I could have ridden that for a long time. But I wasn't happy. But I also didn't just quit that job and say, I don't know if this Spikeball thing's going to work or not, but let's give it a shot. Like, no, I did it for years, and I waited and waited until I could make sort of a lateral move, at least for my personal finances. And, wanted to make sure that this thing was somewhat stable. And, eventually was speaking with some mentors, and one was like, look, this Spikeball, it's a rocket ship. If you don't go all in on it, Chris, it is going to crash and burn. It needs you full time, and probably a few others. And so I think I do a pretty good job of sort of asking people for shared experiences, and people that are smarter than me, like, what would you do if you were in my shoes? And the main thing was when, yeah, we hit 1 million in annual revenue with no full timers, had a couple conversations with my wife over however many months, and we agreed that it was time to do it.
And I mean, you got 3 kids that you need to support. So it's a huge move for you at that moment, right? Knowing that, okay, it's $1 million today, it's profitable now, but to your point, next year, you open, it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, I remember thinking like, okay, if this thing crash and burns a couple months after I quit my day job, I've still got a decent enough network where I can go crawling back to that industry if I needed to. The job that I quit, I worked at Live Nation, so I quit that job and went full time. And at that job, I was sneaking away a lot during the day to do Spikeball work. I would meet our designer at a coffee at Starbucks across the street. We would be assembling this weird trampoline net, and people would be looking at it like, what the heck are you guys doing? And be like, oh, wait, I got to call with the boss. I gotta run. And, back across the street. And, but it's funny, like that was, I don't know how many years ago, 12, 13, something like that. I still have a nightmare. It's probably 2, 3 times a year where I basically get found out that I was sneaking away from the day job, and I don't know why, but it still happens. But yeah, it's funny.
Do you ever worry about having to go back?
Yes, especially when things were pretty challenging, a couple of years ago. I was like, I don't think I'm really employable. I got a feeling a lot of entrepreneurs think the same way.
Yeah.
And, I'm not a serial inventor. Like, shoot, I didn't even invent Spikeball, right? So when I do have those really dark moments, it's like, oh my God, do I have to go get a regular job? And so that is a massive motivator for me. Yeah, I don't know. It works for some, but um,
Well, let's talk a bit about that. I mean, the psychology of entrepreneurship, it's a real battle, frankly. At least I find it is to be that way. I mean, managing your own psychology through all of the uncertainty and all of the potential, what in your mind feel like doomsday scenarios. How do you how do you manage through that?
it's trite to say, but I've heard so many people, being a CEO is the loneliest job in the world. Um, I could not agree more. Um, it is really, really hard. I don't like to paint with broad brushes and just say, "Oh, the media," but in general, when you see the headlines, it's about how good life is. If we're talking the tech world, it's we just raised $100 million and everybody go buy Ferraris and we're having a massive party and we're gonna have this. We're gonna who knows who the band is that's gonna play, but it's all the celebratory great stuff. I almost think of a should there be a podcast that focuses on the challenges or the trying to get the entrepreneur to be as vulnerable as possible and really share what went down during the dark days? Like how I look back at even my social media posts over the last 3 to 5 years, I don't post a whole lot, but they're all largely positive. And, I want the world to see the good that we're doing, but behind that, my God, is there a lot of just massive challenges. So I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm in a business forum and trying to, we've all got that sort of, I don't know about all of us, but I have an internal voice that can go really dark on me. And if I give that voice too much attention, man, I'm just in a bad place. So I have been trying to be as deliberate as possible to not listen to that voice. Actually, been, I know a lot of people have strong feelings on manifesting things, and I'm still a little skeptical, but I love the general idea of it. So I'm kind of just sampling different things. I forget. I think the guy's name is Graham Weaver. I think he's like a professor at Stanford or something. And he said, yeah, if you find three things you want to accomplish in the next 5 years, whether they're business, personal, whatever, start every day by writing those down. And you actually need to get a pen and a paper. There's something in the science that says by actually writing it, it'll help. And then write down one thing you will do that day to get you one step closer to each of those three things. And do that every day for those 5 years. And your chances of hitting those things go up exponentially. I've been doing that for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. Um, and I have definitely not done it every day, but I'm trying. So that's like one little thing to try. And okay, I feel, it's a Monday morning. Most people, there's a sad stat. I think Monday morning is when most people, if you're going to have a heart attack, it's going to be on a Monday morning. It's either Sunday nights or Monday mornings. That's when people feel, I guess, their general stress, if it's going to be work stress. And yeah, what are the things you can do to keep you out of that sort of doom loop? The nice thing about having a consumer brand, I got a handwritten letter from a student at Boulder. I visited there a couple months ago. I was just kind of passing through and met up with the Spikeball Club there, and met them at a coffee shop and just got to hear their story. They wanted to hear like, "Oh, how'd you start the company?" and that. And it was just such a nice visit. And this kid, I'm guessing 19, maybe 20 years old. When's the last time you saw a handwritten letter?
Right.
Let alone from somebody that's 20 years old.
Right.
So I get, I feel very fortunate to have a consumer brand that, in my mind, has a very positive impact on people. And when I get letters like this, man, does that carry me a long way. And no, like, you know what? This is the one person that actually wrote a letter. There's a million out there that had a similar experience that just didn't write the letter, and I just haven't heard it. And that's, of course, totally fine. But I try sharing stuff like this with my team, whether you're on finance, moving boxes in a warehouse, or whatever. Everybody's fingerprints are all over letters like this. And um, yeah, I don't know. That stuff feels really nice, and that is a really nice antidote to that sort of negative talk that I can get myself in.
Tell us about the Shark Tank experience.
It was awesome. The best part is that, it was, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago, and reruns still happen. So it's this gift that just keeps giving. We did not do a deal with Mark Cuban, even though he was the guy that I wanted, but journalists love asking him the question of, what's the one deal that got away? What do you regret? And every single time he says Spikeball. I love it because, he's getting a lot of press. And so I'll email him once or twice a year saying, "Oh, hey, thanks, man, for that," or give him general updates. But yeah, the overall experience was great. The Sharks were all super nice. I was at our college national championship a few weeks ago, and one of the players was asking me about it, and he was like, "Oh, so like, how many takes did it get, like, before you like got the thing right, and like, what were the Sharks like backstage, etc." And he's like, "How real is it?" It's very real. There's one take. You're literally not, if you mess up your pitch, so what? You got to keep going. There is no meeting the Sharks before you film. The first time the entrepreneur ever lays eyes on the Sharks is when you see them walk through the door. And the producers want it to be as real as possible because that's, it's real, genuine emotion. And so I think they do a great job of that. My entire experience, anytime other entrepreneurs reach out to me and say they're thinking about it, I say, absolutely do it. It's great. And yeah, and go in there with it, but only do it if you have a genuine interest in wanting to do a deal. Because if you're showing up just to try to get the exposure, they will sniff that out, and they don't appreciate that, nor should they.
And you almost made a deal, right, with Damon?
Yeah, we did a deal on the show, but afterwards, we had a couple conversations, and he wanted to take the company a different direction. I wanted to keep doing what we were doing, and it was funny. Like, we never really called the deal off. We just kind of stopped calling each other, and we filmed in it's either September or October, but it didn't actually air until the following May. So it was like 7 or 8 months, and that caused a couple problems. One was, after you film, they basically tell you, "Hey, thanks for coming on. If your episode is going to air, we'll call you 2 weeks before it airs. And if we don't call you this season, that means it's never going to air." And just because you got a deal does not mean it will air. The producers, they have a whole host of ways to make decisions about who will air or not. But I think the number one decision was, is this entertaining, right? Like, producers don't really care about the quality of the business. They only care about putting an entertaining product on TV. The Sharks are the only ones that really care about the quality of the business. So yeah, so we filmed in September/October. I had a couple calls with Damon John in the couple months following, but it was largely dead like 6 months before the show even aired. But yeah, so getting back to the 2 week heads up, we had to have, from the time we call our factory, it takes 3, sometimes 4 months to get product. And we knew that if it was going to air, sales would most likely go through the roof, and we needed to have a ton of inventory. So we took every last nickel we had and bought as much inventory as we could, hoping that we were going to get that call. And it didn't air for 8 months, but thankfully when it did air, we had plenty of inventory. Things went well. We had a huge watch party at the office, and yeah, it was a great experience.
Wow, that's a big bet. You bought inventory in anticipation of it potentially airing and had to hold it for 8 months?
Yeah. Now, thankfully, we're not selling oranges here, so the inventory doesn't go bad. But yeah, it was a risky. I was like, and I felt confident. I don't know if I should have been as confident as I was, but I was like, hey, our product's awesome. It plays well on screen. The Sharks and all the producers gave us very positive feedback. So I'm confident doing this. Thankfully, it worked, but we were the final segment of the season finale. Now, so waiting that, and that was like, I think one of the most watched episodes of that season. So it was well worth the wait, but yeah, significant risk tying up that much cash in inventory.
What have you learned over the years? I mean, there's an expression in buying that you always buy too much or too little, and there are obviously implications to overbuying on your cash conversion cycles, on the cost of capital. What have you learned over the years about buying inventory?
Yeah, we had way too much these last couple of years. Well, especially from like 21 to maybe 24. And that causes insane problems that, I just didn't know were possible. Oh, and we also had a distributor go bankrupt that stiffed us for over $1 million as we're going
Oh my
through
gosh.
all that as well. So, we were in this like just perfect storm but in the past, I was always a go, go, go. Let's sell as much as we can and 100 miles an hour at all times. And if we were ever to run out of inventory, that was absolutely unacceptable. I have since seen the light. Uh, and I got a note from my demand planner a few days ago saying, hey, sales have been a good amount stronger recently than we thought. And there's a chance we might run out of a couple SKUs just for maybe a week or two. Don't no worry, the rest of the inventory is coming. And that's okay with me. That is a more conservative approach. I, of course, never want to miss a sale, but I also don't want to have way too much and potentially struggle to pay for that or not be able to pay for something else because I have so much capital tied up in inventory. So if I got to choose between the two, I'm going with less. And that's it. That was a big learning of mine. If you would have asked me that question a couple years ago, I would have said, no, like it's not going to go bad. Let's have it sit around forever. And somebody, I forget who it was, but they said something like, yeah, when you're in that warehouse and you see those thousands or tens of thousands of units sitting there, don't be too proud. Like, yes, it's cool to see and all that, but that's actually cash. Turning cardboard boxes full of product into cash is not an easy thing to do. There's no like fast forward button that you can just push without, like the fast forward button that people typically reach for is discounting.
Right.
Um, and that will typically damage the brand long term. So you better think twice before hitting that button. But much smarter to avoid having to be in the position to where you have to hit that button. And I think you can avoid that with smarter inventory management, which our systems today are a heck of a lot smarter and more sophisticated than they were just a couple of years ago.
How do you think about discounting? Especially on a product where, I'm likely not buying multiple upon multiple sets.
I don't like it. We do it from time to time. So Prime Day's coming up soon. So that's kind of, everybody does that. So we'll do that. We'll do a discount usually around holiday. And then we've been playing around recently with discounting on bundles on spikeball.com. So, if you buy 2 or 3 products, maybe you get a couple bucks off or something like that. In general, I'm no fan of it. I think if you do it too often, you are training the consumer to wait for the next sale. And again, for a company that wants to be here for the long haul, I don't see it as a great strategy. And discounting is one thing, and then spending a ton on ads is another. And historically, we have spent very little on paid ads. We've been spending more these last couple of years, and we're doing it efficiently. But, for those first, I don't know, 15 years or so, I don't think we spent a nickel on Meta and spent
Wow.
very little on Google. It was all organic, which is incredible, right? Now the world has changed. So, okay, getting a free ride on Instagram or Facebook really isn't a thing anymore. Having a bunch of followers doesn't matter anymore. We're changing, but I'm also kind of wrestling with how much should I invest in paid ads and making sure we get a healthy ROAS or, CPA, et cetera, versus top of funnel, build the brand, and let's take the long-term approach. Let's tell the stories. And what is that mix? That's a debate we're having internally right now.
I was always of the school, discounting, it pulls demand forward, it trains your customer to wait for them. But more and more, I wonder if that ship has sailed and the customer's just trained at this point. It almost feels like they'll just wait you out. I don't know. I've recently sort of become far less precious when thinking about brands than I was when I was building David's Tea.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I do think I can. I love that you use the word precious because I'll use that as well with Spikeball, and I will sometimes think that I am just too precious with it. Like, oh, don't mess with this. We've always done it this way, and we can't do it that way. And but one of our values is to challenge the status quo.
Right.
And if I am getting a little too precious, or no, we can't do that because of this, then I need somebody. Ideally, it's myself, but if it's not me, somebody else to say, "Hey, Chris, just because we did that way yesterday doesn't mean we're doing it this way today."
You guys have done community at a world-class level.
Thank you.
I mean, you've turned these early customers into ambassadors. It's pretty amazing. I mean, you truly did build a sport. I mean, a lot of people talk about the ad game, and many businesses built their businesses on Facebook ads. You didn't, whether it's the Boulder, Colorado Spikeball group or a tournament on ESPN that you guys put together. How does somebody listening to this who's like, okay, I'm going to go build community? Everybody says it sounds good. What do you actually do to build community? How do you invest in community?
Like any relationship, think of a friendship, right? It's really hard to sort of find a tool out there to accelerate it. And the person that you met today is probably not going to be your best friend tomorrow. If they are your best friend, you're getting the ultimate ROI and it's just the best return, etc. Somebody becomes your best friend over time and through experience and through trust. And that is something I think we've done, not perfectly. Of course, we've messed up from time to time, but we show up, and that's usually in person. Yes, we're doing more paid ads today than yesterday, but that's not building much of a relationship. That is converting a sale, which is wildly different than building a relationship. So the Spikeball app is a perfect example. Yes, you can buy product on it right now, but I believe our total revenue on it right now is probably zero. It's just a link we put in there. That is not the goal of it. The goal is to get people together to play. Another, like I showed up to the college national championship 10 days ago in Charlotte. I had no official role. Nobody needed me there, but I wanted to go learn, shake some hands, not only of the players, but also of the parents, the grandparents that show up to the tournaments. When I do go to tournaments, I usually show up with a bag or box full of t-shirts and hats and stuff I just give away, and it's awesome. I love it. And I'm walking around, like I'm a super fan with my phone, just interviewing people, filming, etc. And I bring that stuff back to my team and say, hey, here's what I learned. Here's what people are into. Here's what they're not into. The amount of Crocs that I saw on the sidelines at that tournament is sparking ideas. Is there a collab we should do with Crocs? Maybe, maybe not. Or, when I, was talking to, I forget the woman's name, but she was a college student, and she was telling me how important the being on the team was and how that was like really her social circle. And I, really dug deep on that. And I said, hey, how'd you decide to go to school where you went to school, and how'd you eventually learn about the club? And she said, oh, I was a freshman. I was at the college and walking on campus. I'd been there a couple of weeks, didn't know anybody, wasn't even really sure I made the right decision. Like, did I go to the right college? And then all of a sudden, there's some people playing Spikeball over there, and they called me over. And that is what turned into my group of 4-year friends, and we'll probably be lifelong friends. And we since have traveled. We've been to each other's houses for Thanksgiving, and I just so love everything about that story. I got a note from a kid that went to Indiana University, just graduated. And I've loosely been in touch with him over a couple of years and just kind of learning about the club and that. And again, he sent a letter out of the blue, not asking for anything, just expressing gratitude for Spikeball, for the work we've done, etc. Said he just graduated and he's getting ready to move to New York. It's like, hey man, so great. Proud of you for graduating. By the way, when you go to New York, look up this group called NYC Roundnet. That is this huge Spikeball community. And he said, I'm one step ahead of you. I'm actually playing with them Tuesday night. And I so love that because Okay, the sport and the brand brought a community to him for those 5 years of college, which was awesome. But he moved to a new city, didn't really know anybody, and there is a pre-installed community there. And he will be welcomed with open arms, and he is now gonna have a rock solid group of friends. And actually, as I'm talking, this is an NYC Roundnet t-shirt I'm wearing right now. So they've got like 1,500 people in their Discord group, and it's just this awesome self-organized club that, getting way back to your question of what do we do to build community? We don't try to start our own clubs in New York or at Indiana University. We support them. So I will occasionally reach out to NYC RoundNet and say, how can I help you? Do you guys need sets? Do you need balls? Do you need discounts? Or do you just need help with something else? But whatever it is, let me know. There's an amazing group in San Diego that's doing another thing. They have Tuesday night Spike on the beach. I need to get San Diego and New York and another amazing group in Boston. I need to get them all together so they can start sharing best practices. Doing stuff like that over 18 years, those are all small turns of that flywheel. Those first couple ones aren't going to do a whole lot, but you do it for a very long time, and you're going to start talking about real numbers, real momentum, real relationships, and real community.
Well, it sounds like you don't create community, you facilitate it,
Absolutely.
and then you get out of the way.
Yes, I've told so many people that, hey, I don't need Spikeball to be on stage and in the spotlight. In fact, I'd prefer that we don't. I want us to be backstage, putting forth the community leader and making sure they are the one that gets the spotlight. And yes, of course, being the brand, sometimes it'll be us. That's fine. But that's not like, if we just always lead with us, that's not going to do a whole lot. But if we lead with, here is an amazing community, or here's an amazing event, and like, look at our product development, like it's always been in response to things we've seen from the community. Our new Titan set, it's one of the strongest ones out there. It's super high strength, and that was because we heard from the competitive community they want something stronger. We heard from PE teachers and camp directors that, hey, we need something really beefy, and we designed it and made it. This set behind me, you can see over my shoulder, Paris Saint-Germain, the massive soccer slash football team who just won the Champions League back to back on Saturday. They reached out to us like 2 months ago saying, hey, Spikeball, we love you guys so much. We love your brand, your community. Would you like to work together in some way? And I get this note and I'm like, oh my God, like this has to be a joke or something. There's no way. How did we show up like little old Spikeball on their radar? We get on a call, and I, of course, think they're going to be like, yeah, we'd like to work with you. And if you give us, $5 million and buy a sponsorship, you can do blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, we just like your general vibe. We don't want any money to exchange hands. Let's just make some cool stuff. And they've got these, they're calling them houses here in the US to help promote the World Cup. So in LA and in New York, they're going to do two separate events where they take over a retail space and completely cover it in their branding. And their brand is all about art, fashion, music, culture, etc. And they want like a fun activity. So we said, hey, let's make a couple super limited edition PSG Spikeball sets. And they gave us all this artwork, which is like kind of graffiti
Cool.
like, and tells the history of their brand. And that's the first thing we're going to do. What's the next thing going to be? I'm not exactly sure, but the fact that a world-class organization like that would reach out to us, there is no higher compliment. A couple months ago, New York Times, in their crossword puzzle, one of the words was Spikeball. We are a part of culture, pop culture, and we're not paying for this stuff. I think it's just the way that we build community and engage with our customers and overall community that people want to be involved in that. And sometimes it's a 16-year-old kid having fun in a backyard, and other times it's the New York Times or Paris Saint-Germain. But it's something that is seemingly attracting people, and I love it.
Well, and you clearly derive a ton of meaning beyond just the monetary from your business. I mean, that oozes out of you in this conversation. But you made what I think is one of the most selfless moves I've ever seen in business. I mean, you basically, you didn't invent the sport, but you certainly resurrected it and brought it back to life. And if you didn't do that, there is no Spikeball today. But you made this decision somewhere along the way. You decoupled the name of the sport from your brand name. Instead of, you could have called the sport Spikeball, and instead you chose to let it be called roundnet. which of course invited competition and was risky, I imagine, at the time.
Yeah, we had a lot of internal debate on that, and yeah. So for those that aren't aware, roundnet, literally the word round, our product is a round net. That is the name of the sport. Just like baseball, basketball, football, those are all generic terms that nobody owns the rights to. Roundnet is a generic name for the sport. Now, with that said, and by the way, Spikeball, in technical terms, Spikeball is a company that makes equipment for the sport of roundnet. Now, with that said, if I were to do a survey of all of my customers and I were to ask them, a lot of them use the term, let's go play Spikeball.
Right.
And I've had probably an equal number of attorneys on both sides saying, Chris, you are fine to call it Spikeball all day long. But just make sure nobody is like making money on the name Spikeball, because if that were to happen, then you can potentially lose your trademark. But then other attorneys are like, no, you need to, treat the never say I'm playing Spikeball and only call it roundnet. Years ago, I spoke with the chief counsel at CrossFit, and CrossFit does not have a generic name and a branded name. They have a single name CrossFit. And his general feedback to me was, do not follow our lead, because I spend a lot of money every year suing our own customers for misusing our name, and it is a lose-lose. It's no fun. I
Wow.
was also friends with the former head of marketing at Rollerblade, Mary Horwath, and she is the one that coined the term inline skating. So when you see competitions at the X Games and elsewhere, you don't see rollerblade competitions, which is a trademark term. You see inline skating. So Rollerblade makes equipment for the sport of inline skating, and she did that to protect the name Rollerblade. So we essentially followed their lead. And it's kind of like UFC, MMA, and there's a lot of different Kleenex facial tissue. I am a bit torn because if I were just to tell somebody that, yeah, I run a company that makes roundnet equipment, they're going to like, wait, what the heck is that? But when I say Spikeball, oh my gosh, let me tell you about my bachelor party when I played, or let me tell you about the graduation party, or so if I'm trying to build the community, using the name Spikeball will get me so much farther than using the name roundnet. So what is the appropriate balance? So now we'll call a tournament, if we're sponsoring it, it's a Spikeball roundnet tournament, which is kind of like a Nike basketball tournament, right? So Nike is sponsoring these events, just like Spikeball is sponsoring events. Now, we have some players in our competitive community, they get very, very upset when we will call the name of the sport Spikeball. No, 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 it's roundnet. And I get that, but I wish they would look at what we're trying to do. We are trying to grow the community, and the number one tool we have to do that is the name Spikeball. And we're still using the name roundnet a lot, maybe not 100% of the time, but a lot. And just like I'm assuming back in the day when James Naismith started basketball, it probably wasn't called basketball. Who knows what it was, but nobody had ever heard of it. And why are you throwing that ball in that peach basket? I'm assuming he got a lot of questions. But we're trying to look at the whole pie and not just, okay, let's absolutely be dogmatic and only use roundnet, because if we do that, we are holding ourselves back. And like, I get so many notes from college clubs saying, hey, is it okay if we use the name Spikeball in our club? Because when we call it our roundnet club, not as many people sign up. But when we call it a Spikeball club, we get a lot more. And my answer usually is, yes, let's create a contract though, and I will license you the Spikeball name. And it's usually, I don't know, $1 a year or something, just so we have something in writing. And go for it. If that's going to help you grow a community, as long as I can protect my name, I absolutely want you guys to do that. So, it was funny. Actually, the first name of the sport I came up with was Revol, Revol, which is short for revolution. A ball spins in a revolution. And I thought I was being all creative. And then I announced that at one of our tournaments that the official name of the sport is Revol. And I was like the most hated guy at the tournament, because everybody was like, absolutely not. It's called Spikeball. And then I heard from my lawyers a month later, they're like, Chris, that is not a generic term. That is a made up thing that actually you could file a trademark for. So you need a generic, you need something that's descriptive. And I was like, okay, one thing that's unique to our sport is it's a round net, and I can't think of another sport that has that. And so then I changed my tune, and I told everybody the name of the sport was round net, and or round net, and they hated that just as much as well. But it's caught on over the years. Somebody actually started a company called Revol, oddly enough. I guess when I see how passionate people are about it, I should take that as a compliment because that means they care,
Of
right?
course, 100%. You created an entire sport. Chris, you're an absolute legend. When you decided to work with High Beam, my office went crazy with excitement. I don't think I've told you that, but they were just like, "Oh my God, this is the coolest brand we ever have signed." We have a lightning round here, just a few quick questions. What's a decision you're wrestling with right now?
Of our limited resources, how much should go to long-term brand building and storytelling versus short-term conversion, or top of funnel versus bottom, to put it another way?
I mean, long term obviously is much harder to measure. Do you just come up with a number and say, that's just what it is, go spend it?
That is the tricky part. So we're trying to come up with, like, what are the three. We just brought on a new head of brand and creative, actually joined us from Turtlebox, and project he's working on. What are the three metrics he should be tracking to determine whether his work is working? So what are those? And I don't have a clear answer today. I do think one of those is probably sell through. It's our sales team's job to get the product on the shelf at Walmart. It's the marketing team's job to make sure people are actually buying it. So sell through is probably one of them. Should it be social media views or shares or organic? Like, I don't know, but we're debating.
It's an age old problem in how as I'm listening to you talk about the importance of community and how you built it over a long period of time. I think where a lot of people, it requires a bit of faith. I mean, in business, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it is the age old adage. But when you're building a brand, there's a lot you simply you can't measure.
Absolutely. And that's the hardest part. I do think there is something to the trust your gut line. I'm a huge fan of the Yeti brand, and they make just stunning creative. Their videos, their mini documentaries on fly fishermen, barbecue, etc. And you watch interviews from their marketing team, and the journalist will say, well, how do you get an ROI from that? Or and the response I more often than not hear is, oh, our CMO has never asked me. We just get to go make beautiful stuff.
Right. It's refreshing.
It is, but I'm
Yeah.
also like, as CEO, I'd love to have that confidence that, okay, I'm going to go spend 5, 10, 15 grand to make this, to fly people out, to record this. And if it gets 100,000 views, okay, that's not moving the needle for anybody, but I still think there's value. I love, like, we've had a handful of these conversations where it's like, oh, we just made this content, this video. This is stunning. Would we do it again? Did it move sales? Did we? And nobody can answer that. But I think we need to, again, take that long term. And even like Yeti's beautiful videos, sometimes they won't get tons of views, but I do think it is pulling people in. So maybe their video only gets 100,000 views, but those 100,000 are probably worth way more than 10 million you'd get on TikTok, where people are watching for 2.5 seconds, because Yeti's 100,000 are probably watching for the full 20 minutes.
Well, and it becomes a bit of a binge bank too, right? Like where someone goes to check out your brand and then they're looking through a variety of different, dated content that you put out. It's almost like you need a make it cool fund. Like you take a certain amount of money, you put it aside, and you're like, the measurement is, was it cool or not?
Absolutely. Like the college nationals that I just went up to, I spent, I don't know, it was close enough where I got to drive. So spent a couple bucks on a hotel and giving away that stuff. Could I justify that on a spreadsheet? I don't know. I can't put the emotions, the handshakes, the hugs, the relationships into a spreadsheet. And, it's sort of this almost gut versus spreadsheet dichotomy that we're kind of wrestling with here.
Yeah, business is both art and science, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Last question. Every founder reviving someone else's idea should.
Reach out to them first, do it the right way, and then act accordingly.
Chris, what a pleasure. This is one of the most powerful interviews we've done. 18 years of wisdom in 1 hour here. Really, really appreciate you coming on, and I hope people get as much out of this as I have.
Awesome. So appreciate it. Thank you, David.